Introduction to Adjective Clauses. In this lesson, you'll learn how to identify an adjective clause. You'll also learn what an adjective clause does and where it goes in a sentence. Before watching this video, you read about my neighbors. If you haven't read about them yet, please pause the video and read now. In the reading, you'll see many examples of the grammar we will learn about in this lesson. This is my street. I live here in this beautiful orange house. The people who live in my street are unique and wonderful. They're my neighbors. There's Raj and Tom, Lisa, the Wongs, Keiko, and Maria. You read a lot about my neighbors. Here are some facts. Keiko and Maria are both elderly women who live alone. The Wongs cook food that smells delicious. Lisa is a person who people trust. Raj has a dog that he often takes on walks. These sentences all have examples of adjective clauses. But what is an adjective clause? And why do we use adjective clauses? Let's look more closely at the first sentence to help us answer these questions. Keiko and Maria are both elderly women who live alone. This is one sentence. Who live alone is an adjective clause. The main clause is Keiko and Maria are both elderly women. Remember, a clause is a subject and a verb. Sometimes a clause is independent. That means it can be alone. Sometimes it's dependent, which means it cannot be alone. Adjective clauses are always dependent. That means they always need another clause to be a complete sentence. Together, these two clauses form a complex sentence with an adjective clause. Let's see that one more time. We will split these sentences up into two. Keiko and Maria are both elderly women. They live alone. We have two complete sentences, or two independent clauses. They refers to women. We have something in common here between these two sentences. Remember, when you're writing, you want to connect ideas when it's possible. This is good writing. So, to do that, we can connect these two sentences by forming an adjective clause. We simply replace they with who. Who equals they. It's the subject of the adjective clause. Now we have one complex sentence with an adjective clause. But why is it called an adjective clause? You already know what an adjective is. An adjective describes a noun. For example, I could say Keiko and Maria are kind, smart, beautiful. Kind, smart, and beautiful are all adjectives because they tell us more about a noun. Adjective clauses, similarly, tell us more about a noun, so they do the job of an adjective. Who live alone is the adjective clause, and it's describing a noun here. Which noun is it describing? That's right. It's telling us more about the women. Let's return to the other sentences with adjective clauses to notice some things. You see here that an adjective clause can begin with who. But what other word do you see? You also see that an adjective clause can begin with that. Who and that are called relative pronouns. They are words that we can use to introduce an adjective clause. Very often, we begin an adjective clause with who or that, but it's also possible to start an adjective clause with which, whose, whom, where, or when. You'll learn more about these words and how to use them in adjective clauses in future lessons. Also, notice that an adjective clause can describe a person because people are nouns, or an adjective clause could describe a thing because things are also nouns. Let's talk about where adjective clauses go in a sentence, or adjective clause placement. Notice here that the adjective clauses always come right after the noun that they describe. This is different from single word adjectives. For example, Raj has a cute dog. Here, the adjective comes before dog, which is the noun it describes. Or Raj's dog is friendly. Here, the adjective friendly comes after a be verb, is. But with the adjective clause, Raj has a dog that is cute and friendly, we see the adjective clause right after the noun it describes. All right, now you really know how to identify an adjective clause and the noun that it describes. But I should mention that sometimes you'll see an adjective clause in the middle of a sentence. It won't always be at the end. So here, women who live alone are independent, the adjective clause still comes after the noun it describes, but the rest of the sentence is part of the main clause. So the main clause here is women are independent. Which kind of women? Women who live alone. Who live alone and women who live alone are not complete sentences. So just remember, whenever you have an adjective clause, you need a main clause to make it a complete sentence in writing. Now you know a little bit more about how to identify an adjective clause, what it does, and where it goes in a sentence.